Good evening. My name is Patrick Dawson. I'm the principal here at Stratford Middle School. I want to welcome you to our online curriculum night. On this video, I'm joined by our assistant principals, Ms. Kelly Moyer and Mr. Rich Novi. It's our hope that through these videos and through the Google site that you'll be linked to at the end, that you as a parent feel informed, communicated with, and that you can be an equal partner in your student's success. The theme this year for us is normal-ish. Our goal really is to not allow the ish parts to outshine the normal parts. It's been great having students back in the building and walking the halls and in classes, and so it's our goal to make it a really positive experience for them. Just a few things in terms of communication and how you can make sure that you're aware of what's going on here at Stratford and in your students' classes. First and foremost is that your students' teachers will use Google Classroom as their primary way of communicating assignments as well as work that might be due with your student. Teachers are in the routine of posting assignments to Google Classroom pretty regularly. So please make sure that you're aware if there's a parent link for your class so that you can be on there and you can see what your student is seeing. You can follow up and see if they've submitted assignments there. Second form of communication that's really important for you to be aware of is the principal newsletter. I send out a principal newsletter every 1 to 2 weeks, usually on the weekend, that's a great place for you to be aware of what's happening within the building. So not so much grade level or team specific or classroom specific, but building wide. So we announce clubs, we announce sports, we announce PTA meetings, all those different things that are going on so that you can be informed. The email address that those newsletters come from is being shown on the screen right now. And if you have not received a newsletter from me yet this year, I would just ask that you add that email address as a contact in your email address book. Finally, in about a month and a half, we will have our fall student-led conferences. Those will be October 20th and 21st. And that's a great opportunity for us to sit down and talk about where is your student doing really well and what are some areas of improvement that we can all wrap around them and support them in. It's my hope that you would sign up for those conferences. There will be more information about sign up that'll come out in early October, but please be on the lookout for that information.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Moyer, and I am one of the assistant principals here at Stratford Middle School. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening and joining us. Our new middle school schedule has some very unique opportunities for students. One of our new classes that we're offering this year is COOL, Choice of Options at Lunch. During this time, students will be given the opportunity to spend time in a quiet room, a work room, or a social room. Students will be making these choices on a monthly basis. Another new class that we have offered within our new student schedule is WIN, which stands for What I Need Now. We are very excited to offer many very unique opportunities to students. This class is offered in Hexters. We will be getting Hexter 2 the week of September 20th. Students last week made some choices as far as things that they are interested in studying during WIN time. Here are some of the unique classes that we are offering. Just a reminder that lunch is offered daily here at Stratford. Students may receive a free breakfast and a free lunch each day.
Hello, I'm Rich Novi. I'm the other assistant principal here at Stratford Middle School. This is my first year here. I'm super excited to be here. Hopefully you've heard my name once or twice from your child. I'm going to talk to you about some of the more office-related items here. First one being having safe schools. This is probably the most important part of any school. And so we have an anonymous tip line that our students can use to report concerns with safety or bullying. We take that very seriously here. This tip line is also available to you, so if your student comes home and reports something to you, please feel free to visit our Stratford website to access the Safe School tip line. Absences is another point that I would like to talk about very quickly. Just a quick reminder that if your student is not going to be at school for the day, to please call the office and let us know the reason, whether it's an appointment with the doctor, a dentist, or they're not feeling well. If they are not feeling well, please make sure you leave that information with Nurse Gibbons in case that your child needs to be quarantined, so we can make the proper arrangements to have your student given the support they need while they're out. The next item I'd like to speak to you about is clubs. Recently this week during our town halls, we shared some really awesome clubs, opportunities for students to get involved after school.
Hello and welcome to Curriculum Night 2021. My name is Jonathan Zimmerman. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Innovation in District 93. And I'm here to talk to you about standards-based reporting and grading in District 93, and specifically our standards-based gradebook and the new gradebook system you'll have access to. And I want to talk to you about what you can expect to see in that system and help you understand some of the things that you'll see in that system. So when you talk about a standards-based gradebook, we refer to it as standards-based gradebook because we as a district are a standards-based reporting district. That means all of our teaching, all of our planning that teachers do, and then all of the assessment we do is aligned to standards. That means at each grade level there are expectations, learning targets, standards that students have to achieve by the end of that school year. So in that grade level, we have standards for all of our classes in each grade level, and teachers and students work toward those standards. The purpose then of a standards-based gradebook is to reflect and report progress toward those standards so that you can see how your students are doing and progressing toward the grade level expectations and standards we have for each course. When you go into the gradebook, you're going to see a grade scale, or really a 4-level scale that helps describe and provide information about how students are performing in relation to their grade level standards. In our grade scale, you'll see an E for exceeding, an M for meeting, a P for progressing, and an LP for limited progress. And those descriptors help us understand where students are performing in relation to the standards, and they give us a sense of that we know those are end of year standards that students are working toward. And it gives us a sense that how are they doing toward those standards? And for many students, especially younger students who are just developing their understanding of certain concepts and basic ideas, that we don't expect them necessarily to have to meet those standards at the beginning of the year. So we're looking at a progression over time and seeing how they're doing on standards as they work toward the end of the year standards. As we look at our 4-level scale, I want to give a little more information about what do we mean. You might see those descriptors and say, well, what does exceeding mean, or what does progressing mean? So as we look at student progression of learning, in this version from left to right, we start with limited progress. What we mean by that is there's still, students are working on kind of getting the basic, the essential skills needed to get toward meeting that standard. They haven't really gotten the basics down yet. They're really just getting some limited understanding. They're getting some emerging in their understanding. They're still in the process of developing and acquiring some of those basic skills. When we move into progressing, they're demonstrating some partial understanding, some basic skills that are going to get them to the full standard, but they still haven't quite gotten there, but they're really making appropriate progress toward meeting those standards. When we get to meets, first thing I want to say is the standards we have for each grade level are rigorous standards. So these are challenging standards, and really the goal for all of our students is to meet those standards, get at that level and reach those standards. That's a very challenging task and a rigorous task, but we believe that all students can do that. When we talk about meets, we mean not just that they have kind of some partial understanding, some basic understandings as they're progressing, but now they've really become consistent and shown very considerable and substantial understanding of those standards and demonstrated with evidence to teachers that they really are meeting that expectation given for that standard. When it comes to exceeding, that means students not only really show and demonstrate that they meet the standard and they really show solid understanding, but they go deeper and in more depth beyond what meeting the standards is. So we talk about words like an extensive understanding, a comprehensive understanding, having a more insightful understanding. In our description, we also talk about oftentimes that's a transferable knowledge. They can apply it to other places, right? That really shows they're beyond just kind of solid meaning, but they're really extending and going even deeper when we get to that exceeding category. And I do want to mention, for those of you who are familiar with or have used our previous scale where we had a 5-point scale, we now use just descriptors, and that 5 previously was exceeds. I want to be clear that even though we have 4 levels, that exceeds level is still that same high expectation for students to exceed. We have not minimized or changed what the 5 was. We just call it exceeds now, and that's the level we're talking about, that highest level for the exceeds category. What the 4-level scale does for us is helps us to be really clean in making decisions as a teacher and communicating to parents of saying, here's what meets means, here's how we describe this, and is the student showing us evidence that they're doing that descriptor, that they're meeting that standard? And that having 4 levels helps us to eliminate any gray area and be able to say, here's what exceeding means, have they hit that target yet, and report to that. So I want to just make sure we have some better understanding. As you look at student rubrics, you can kind of refer to this language and look at how students are progressing at those different levels. Now, the other key thing for you to note as you look at the gradebook and look at the more information you're going to have in the new gradebook. When you look in the new gradebook, one thing you'll see that's different is in the past we've always had standard categories. So for example, in our language arts classes, our English language arts classes, we have a category called reading literature and a category called reading informational text. And we report how students are doing on those 2 different things, because that can be different. Students can oftentimes have more success or do better at reading literature. Others might be better with informational text as readers. We'll still have those categories, and that's helpful information. But in the gradebook now, you'll see even more specific standards for each category that we have on the report card. So there are specific standards about reading literature that are laid out for each grade level, for each class, and that students are working toward. So in the gradebook, you're going to see not only how they're doing in the larger category, but how are they doing on the standards, specific standards in that category that were assessed in that trimester. And you can track those over time. You can see exactly how they've been doing on specific standards, not just the overall standard category. But as we look at all those standards, and you'll see all those listed in the gradebook, I want to make sure I'm clear that we don't assess every single standard in the gradebook in each trimester. We identify very specific standards, and teachers work with their classes on specific standards in each unit, in each trimester, and they really hone in on those things and work through those, not only through instruction and practice, but then through assessment, which you'll then see the results of that in the gradebook. But I want to make sure you know that you can expect to always see a set of standards that are not being assessed, and that's okay. That's expected. That's not something that's wrong or your student's doing wrong or the teacher's not completing. That's what we expect. We identify only some standards that will be assessed in each trimester, and that's what you'll see reflected in the gradebook. In addition to academic standards, when you go into the gradebook, you will also see information on work habit standards. And in our gradebooks, whether you're kindergarten through 8th grade, there'll be 5 categories that fall into these general categories around appropriate use of technology and resources, completing assignments and classwork on time and in a proper fashion, actively participating in class and the learning, doing some academic goal setting and then problem solving as you work toward those goals, and then respecting rules and directions across all settings in our schools. And these scores are very valuable to us as a district. They're extremely important because they make all the difference in terms of our students' academic success and success in life. So we want to value these, and you'll see teachers reporting to these in the gradebook as well as the academic standards, but they are reported separately because those are separate things. We report how are they specifically doing on an academic standard, but then also how are they doing these work habits and where can we make improvements, where are they doing really well. Just like we talk about in academics, there's places of success and places for growth, and we want to continue to look at both areas as we report student progress. The other thing you'll notice in the gradebook is that some grades, you'll see some things that are kind of grayed out in the gradebook, and that doesn't mean that they're not important. It just means that they're kind of different types of assignments, and they're referred to as summative and formative. The formative scores, the ones that are grayed out in the gradebook, reflect that it's practice work. Students have maybe just been introduced to an idea, a concept, and they're just starting to practice and do learning. But it's important for us as teachers to collect information on how students are doing, even if it's just practicing. And it's good for you as a parent to be able to see how my student is doing, even if they haven't gotten to what we call a summative or a more concluding kind of assessment around that standard. So formative is around kind of early stages of learning a standard and practice type activities, which could be homework, classwork. Those all might be examples of formative learning. And then other scores that aren't grayed out are summative scores, and that means that usually would reflect work that's done after a student has had instruction and time to practice and learn a standard. But those summatives can take all sorts of forms. Sometimes we think of assessment only as being a test, like a paper pencil test that we do. And that's one type of assessment, but certainly a summative assessment information you see in the gradebook could be all sorts of things. It could be a presentation from a student. It could be a kind of conversation a teacher had with a student and collected information. It could be an observation a teacher had and saw a student provide evidence of meeting a certain standard. There could be even like kind of short checks at the end of a class. We've learned all this stuff and now I have one question for you to answer. So every summative doesn't mean it's, I just want to make sure you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a large scale or a large paper that's been turned in, but there's all sorts of information that we would gather after students had instruction and time to practice that we would consider summative or good indicators of, is the student now meeting or exceeding that standard that we've been working on. In addition to the summative and formative grades you're going to see in the gradebook from the teacher, we also collect other information throughout the year. Students participate in state assessments, as some of them are listed here, which also provide us information about how students are progressing toward the standards. So we do certainly all those things you'll see in the gradebook around standards and classroom learning, but we also collect information on student progress towards standards using state assessments as well. And as we look at your access to the gradebook, we really want to emphasize one thing about the gradebook when you get into it. What is our goal? What do we believe about the gradebook and what its purpose is? We believe the goal of grading and reporting in District 93 is to communicate student progress. The gradebook is there, and we want to give you access to it and a lot of information in there so you can see how your child is progressing toward the standards they're learning in class. The purpose of the gradebook then is to really help not only teachers and administrators, but you as a parent to have an understanding of where your student is in relation to the standards that they are working on. When you go into the gradebook, you'll be able to see some information and get into some details about your student's performance. And that's what we mean when we say the goal is communication, that there'll be a lot of information in for you to see in the gradebook. If you go to the web view, you get an overview page that'll kind of just show you how they're doing in general on their courses, but it'll give you opportunities to click in for specific information, not only on individual standards, not just the larger categories, but also individual assignments and how they're doing on specific assignments within each course. In addition, you'll have access to information through an app, and we really encourage you to use that app as well because the Parent Portal app really gives you the same clear visual overview with the same ability to click in and get more information about how your student is progressing through the standards and the assignments they're completing. So the app can be very useful to you. You'll see both on the web version as well as on the app that when we look at student progress, there's a section of the visual that shows some things grayed out. That just means those are standards that weren't assessed yet this trimester. And to repeat what we said before, you'll always see some gray on your bars when you go into your web view or in your app view. Either way, you're always going to see gray because remember, there's always standards each trimester that aren't being assessed. So that's okay. Don't worry when you see gray. That's expected, and we expect to see that. But what is in there gives you a lot of information to dig into and see how they're doing on the standards that have been assessed and how they're performing on the ones that they're working on currently in this trimester. Next, you'll have a chance to hear about how to get involved with your school's PTA, and then you'll be returned to your school principal. Enjoy the rest of curriculum night, and thanks for watching this presentation.
The PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. Our PTA partners with our school to hold fundraisers and events that contribute to a positive and cohesive school community. This school year, you will receive regular emails and occasional text messages from the PTA, including newsletters and notifications of events and fundraisers. All parents are strongly encouraged to join the PTA. You can find out more about our school's PTA online by visiting the website shown here or sending a message to our PTA president using the email address shown here. You can always find the PTA website under the Our School dropdown on our school's website. Please join the PTA today.
Again, thank you for stopping in and learning more about what we're doing here at Stratford to help support your children and the opportunities available to them. Below this video that you're watching, you will be able to access the grade level videos, and then that's even broken down into the grade level teams, so you can identify where your students' teachers are. And unlike in the past where you would come to school and you'd follow your kid's schedule, you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go first. And what's maybe most important to you, or what you feel you really need to hear and learn more about, just got to click below. Best to you.